Why are you awakening and where is it going? All right, that's the title of this video and this transmission. So, a little backstory. I had my awakening about 4.5 years ago. And you may be experiencing an incredibly intense period where a lot of things are changing in your life, and also you are changing your viewpoint and your realization about how reality works and what it is. You might be feeling like you're living in a dream. You might be questioning everything. You might feel like you either need to slow down, or you may just be feeling like an intense amount of energy flowing through you. And that's all pretty typical, because when you think about any big change that goes on in our lifetime, or any big change that happens at all, it's like a birth, and birth takes contractions, and it really is this big process. So our initial awakening is such a keystone event in our life, and I find like a lot of people in the spiritual community and on this path want to talk about like, when did your awakening happen and stuff like that, and there's like a before and after. And something I want to remind people is that it's not just a one-time thing. There are these really big pivotal moments in our lives, but our awakening journey is never ending. It's infinite. It's infinite in the sense that it's infinite in the sense that every new thing that we discover is an awakening. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with the subject, spirituality, at all. Everything that you learn, or everything that you become aware of in a new way is, that is its own awakening. And so, to stay on subject, the idea of a spiritual awakening is often a very big one, where you're saying, I saw reality from this way, and then all of a sudden, boom, now I'm looking at it from this other angle over here. So it's almost like a lot of times reality itself hasn't even changed. You're just viewing it in a new way. And often, like, your personal experience will change a lot too. That's why I found a lot of times these things come full circle. And we get to experience we get to experience aspects of our old life before we had the awakening, but we get to see them in a new light and learn to love them and really look at them from a different angle. I think that's one of the beautiful things about this reality. So what do you do with this? And what do you do? I think the biggest thing I would say is it's going to be all right. And the biggest piece of information that I would give myself and others, like myself 5 years ago when I was on this journey, and others, is like, hey, there's no rush. There's nowhere to get to. You really feel like you need to get somewhere, or you need to like figure this thing out, or we can get really lost in like different concepts and stuff like that. And especially as like a lot of things are going to be unfolding in the collective, a lot of people are going to like their awakenings are not necessarily going to be forced on them, but the outward signs of reality are going to get louder, and the evidence is going to get much louder. And so people are going to have the opportunity to either look more in one direction or the other. I don't want to say bury their head in the sand, because that implies that like having an awakening is this like ultimate truth, and that like unless you see things that way, you don't get it. And I think that like a pre-awakened spirit, and some would call it like an asleep reality, is just as viable as anything else. It's certainly just as viable of an experience. It just from the perspective of living one, and I don't even want to put one above the other. Again, it's living one, say, one where you felt kind of asleep, and then the other one where you felt awake. But here's the thing is like these flip. So it's like asleep, awake. Okay, sure. Now we got awake. oh man, there's a whole nother awake over here. I couldn't believe I thought that about that. Okay, and then it just keeps going forever and ever. So the point is it really has to do with just context and perspective. Context and perspective is everything. So it's just a reminder that there's really nowhere to get to, and like we are on this journey. We are on our own personal journeys, and like a lot of that is through our own intention, and some of that intention is much deeper than even our conscious intention. And so the point is that yeah, that there's no rush, and there's really nothing to worry about. You can follow that timeline if you want, the timeline of worry and the timeline of everything totally hitting the fan, and I think that like a lot of times the reflection and the message is given to us in the only way that we can see. And so just like what would happen with COVID, like fear was the only message that people could receive when it came to like slowing down and becoming more introspective. So what is coming next? Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of theories and stuff about what's going to happen in the upcoming years, and I see a lot of people talking about, especially on certain platforms, that there's more activity in the skies, and that's something that I've had a fair amount of experience with myself, and there really is like something natural in us that feels a lot of fear when something is very different, and we could say quite literally alien. Like that's the definition of it. And so I think a lot of people will be grasping at different things to make themselves feel comfortable and make their brains be able to comprehend these things, and myself included. And so it just a reminder to all of us that like whatever unfolds and whatever you view, if you whatever concepts and stuff like that you are making real, whether it's like, there are people that are in the religious camp, so they're angels, and like that makes them feel safe because then their brain can be like, I understand this. And then there are people in the science camp that are like, they're plasmoids and someone wrote a paper on it, so now I feel safe because somebody says they understand this and I prescribe to that. And it's like, what, I'm not saying one is more real than the other. Like to each one of those people, those things are equally as real and correct for them. But the point is like why our brains are doing this. Our brains are doing this so that we can feel safe. So we can feel safe, and like our brain is basically here to compute and organize reality. And so when something comes into reality that we don't understand, we feel threatened naturally, and we feel unsafe. So we need to attach to a certain concept. Yeah, and this will be a big part of the awakening journey. So just know that that's what's happening. The ultimate liberator is being able to feel safe in the unknown. And this is something that I still, after all these years, like work on and remind myself that true freedom comes from not a concept and not something that's manifested or not something that's manifesting or not something that is even really tangible. It comes from frequency, and it comes from the space between all things. There's this great peace beneath all these pockets and these ripples and stuff like that. I talk about this a lot. There is this great peace, and that is ultimately the place of true freedom, because in that there are no boundaries, and there's no illusion of separation. There's pure connection. So quite often the thing that we're most scared of and the mind is avoiding the most is actually the place that the deepest love and what your mind is actually looking for actually exists. It's not in the things, it's in between. Yeah. That's why divergent focus is so powerful, to focus on nothing. How do you do that? Everything that you see and you look at and you think about and you imagine and you visualize, try and look between it, around it. Notice that everything isn't just completely solid and everything isn't just completely space. It's, it's like the yin yang. There's the black and white, or it's the frequency. There's the up and the down. So we tend to only look at the ups. But what about the spaces in between? So I'll leave you with that. And just a reminder that there's no rush on your awakening journey. You're in the perfect place at the perfect time. And whatever you're feeling, if it's great intensity, it means there's great movement. And beneath that great movement, where is it actually going to take you? When it's done, there will be a great stillness again. So there's nothing to worry about. Peace and love and blessings.